Alright, YouTube, it just started to rain, so you might hear a little bit of interference here. I'm kind of tipsy right now, so I need to get some stuff off my chest. I don't think that it's any big mystery that I'm not really a big fan of government. I see government, I know that the libertarians, like the purists, like the Austin Peterson people, as opposed to maybe the Johnson people, will say you're a fucking cuck if you point this out, but it's true anyway. I'm more of a classical liberal side of libertarian than I am, abolish everything, privatize everything. Government is really a necessary evil. That is, it needs to exist because otherwise there's really no way to ensure long-term human order that doesn't devolve into nothing but chaos. But that being said, it's still an evil. If you don't constrain it properly, it's full of shit. You look at the way that DC works today. It's just so fucking full of shit. Every goddamn thing that every one of these fucking losers in DC says is a fucking lie. Can't you understand that? It gets to the point where I'm a little bit mystified at the fact that there are people who unironically support really any of these folks. I mean, I was on sort of the Gary Johnson fan bus. I said, well, pragmatic libertarianism, I had to give that up. I said, well, Trump's, I guess, way better than Hillary, certainly. But, I mean, even then, if he gets elected, he's not going to do everything that he's talking about doing. And if he were pure, if he were absolutely honest in everything that he's telling all of us, he would get elected and he would still get stonewalled by Congress. The checks and balances that supposedly they're there to keep us protected from tyranny, also stymie those that are good, that are trying to do good, and then the corrupt folks in Congress, in a bipartisan manner many times, will get in their way. I'd also like to point something out. I don't think people have considered this. Consider this for a moment. It's a great revelation. And I think that you should definitely share this around. It doesn't matter if I'm tipsy, I'm still going to be coherent, trust me. I could guzzle like 4 bottles of wine. I would still make a YouTube video, and it would still sound just fine, trust me. Globalism was originally meant to be good. Globalism dates to the pre-eugenics era, really, when you think about it. The people who first dreamed up what we have come to see as modern globalism had the right idea. They wanted an end to war. They saw war has become too costly, too mechanized. So many people die. So many people suffer. There are so many absolute, utter fucking atrocities. There's so much chaos in modern warfare. We can no longer bear to have this going on. And so they said, well, we'll be globalists now. We'll draw the nations that have the technological apparatus to wage a modern mechanized war. We'll simply draw them together instead of competing constantly in a mean way and fucking each other over and causing battles to break out. We'll try to work together in some sort of loose framework. But what happened? Humans happened. And humans are fucking corrupt. The globalists that existed a century ago that attempted to create an apparatus by which the world could avoid the Third World War, by which the world could avoid any war, really. That same apparatus was almost immediately subjugated by people with money, with political connections. They simply bought a bunch of politicians in all of the participating nations to wage endless warfare for profit. It got even worse. Instead of having one big world war where we all get fucked over, they'll have 1,000 proxy conflicts and the same amount of people will die. It's just they won't necessarily be domestic individuals. They won't even be in the civilized world, so-called. They'll be in some godforsaken desert full of oil, or they'll be in some tropical climate where there's lots of agricultural land, or something like that, or they'll be in some fucking microstate that really wouldn't mean anything at all except that it happens to occupy a strategic location. Can you think of Taiwan or something like that? Or maybe this, the Bosphorus, and held by a nation that, while it has a decent military, it's not a nuclear power. It's not a fully developed, industrialized first world nation, and yet it's a flashpoint for all world politics. Why do you think this is? The globalists originally, 100 years ago, by which I mean those that formed the ethos upon which the world operates today, they meant well. They thought if they just gave themselves more power, they could be benevolent. They could make the world over in such an image that it would be better. There wouldn't be so many goddamn wars. There wouldn't be as many epidemics. They could invest in health. They could invest in education. Everybody would be better off. Wealth would flow from the mines and from the fields, and pretty soon it wouldn't even matter if you were, in a democracy or even like a fucking quasi-totalitarian state. If you were under a monarchy or a completely secular government. If you were communist or capitalist, it wouldn't matter. There'd be so much wealth, nobody could possibly starve. People would be so wealthy, they'd just throw gold at each other all day, practically. That's what they wanted to happen. You look back at like the League of Nations stuff. This was the attempt that they made. It failed. That's why I say we need to fuck globalism. We need to completely destroy it. It was well-meaning. But the political situation of that time and this time means that corporations and banks and criminal syndicates in many cases and military groups and shadowy sort of cabals that were operating and that these people in many cases probably didn't even know existed simply took over in order to make profit. That's all they did. When we say in the Western world we're capitalists as opposed to the communists, or as opposed to socialism, or as opposed to some other interventionist system. That's a fucking lie. We're not even under capitalism right now. If we were, we'd be 10 times as wealthy as we are right now. What we're really under is simply a totalitarian state that pretends not to be a totalitarian state, specifically because it knows people are well armed here, and as long as they can keep that illusion going, they have nothing to worry about. But they will steadily grind us down anyway, steadily disarm people. I have a feeling the Democratic Party, I think, is more in the know than the Republicans, because the types of things that they suggest doing in the name of morality aren't even moral. Taking people's guns away is not moral. They can shroud it in morality all day if they want to. I disagree. I happen to think that it's a prelude to things that are far worse. Globalism today is veiled in a sheen of morality. That is, well, you don't want to be racist, do you? You don't want to seem ethnocentric, do you? You don't want to seem like you hate immigrants, do you? You want a worldwide economy so we can all be rich and so that we can all be prosperous. Yeah, that was the goal of globalism originally. The thing is, it was hijacked. They use the same exact language, the same exact reasoning, but their goals are totally different. Nobody is more wealthy now. In the third world, in these countries getting pumped full of Coca-Cola and McDonald's, are they really more wealthy? Is the average person in any of these states any better off than they were before? No, they're still living in squalor. Half of the people, you look at India, supposedly, again, a capitalist nation. It's influenced by the outside world. It's a globalized nation. Most of the population still lives in squalor. They live in mud huts. They don't have internet access. They don't have access to proper health care. None of the things the globalists promised them ever materialized. You look at Eastern Europe. Has wealth magically run its way into these states, into Poland, or Slovakia, or Lithuania, or any of these other areas by being members of the EU? Of course not. Not a penny was given to them. All they got was brain drain. The Western Europeans, we'll preserve peace. Everything will be fine. There will be no more killings. We'll live in utopia. No, the crime rate's skyrocketing. That's what they got for entertaining the globalists. Here in the United States, they try to browbeat us every day into thinking that our founding fathers envisioned a future in which there would be open borders and gun disarmament in this country. I beg to differ. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think they envisioned a future in which the people at large, not the fucking government, not some retarded bureau, the people at large determined who could and could not enter. Whether you agree with the moral fixtures of that argument or not is peanuts compared to the alternative, and in which they would be a martial society capable of defending themselves. The very fact that we have a standing military is an affront to their concepts. It may have become necessary because, again, the globalists designed that it should be by developing the concept of mutually assured destruction, but that doesn't mean that we need to be disarmed. If anything, we should be more well armed to prepare for the inevitable. When globalism breaks down and they bring about the Third World War, we're going to need those guns. We're going to need to hunt food, even if it glows in the dark. Hell, maybe it'll make it easier to hunt. You'll be able to go hunting at night because all of those insects and deer and everything you'll be looking at, they'll be glowing like a fucking Christmas tree. You'll be able to practically see in the dark. You won't even need night vision goggles at that point. It'll be just fine. Yeah, you'll probably die when you're 50. Okay, that's fine. You get cancer and you die. Well, everybody else will too in the world. So I guess even Stevens on that token. And I'd also like to point out how fucked up the media is. The media, by which I mean the mainstream media, not the underground media. I was listening today to NPR. I do this sometimes when I'm, bored. We've only got really 2 good music stations, and they're not that good. One supposedly is classic rock. Half the time they play fucking disco music, which I wouldn't class as classic rock. The other one used to be a rock station. They played some good shit. Now, other than adding like 90s rock to it, most of the stuff they play is like golden oldies or something like that. I'm not going to listen to that fucking shit. If it's the Beatles, yeah. If it's like, the Beach Boys, Led Zeppelin, that's fine. But most of it's not. That's like the bubblegum pop of the 70s. I'm not listening to Gary Glitter. I'm not interested in listening to Gary Glitter. He's fucking pederast, just like all these other goofballs. So I'm not going to listen to that stuff. So I tune into NPR, right? I'm listening to the radio. And what the fuck are they talking about? First, they start talking about race, which is just a bunch of bullshit. But in the context of this, they said something very interesting. The person on there, and I can't remember her name, says something to the effect of, the decentralization of the media. That is, the rise of the information age. That is, I can take a smartphone and broadcast live, and, a million people hear what I have to say. I put out a tweet. Thousands of people maybe retweet it within an hour. I put a YouTube video online within a couple days. Thousands of people or millions of people potentially have seen it. They've spread it all around the world. Everybody in the fucking world knows what I've posted online within the matter of days or weeks potentially. This is the power of the internet. She said, it's a bad thing because people can push their personal agenda and they'll cut pieces out of the news story that they happen not to agree with, and they'll try to push their agenda. What the fuck has the mainstream media of the goddamn entire world done since television existed? And before that, radio. And before that, print news. You look back at the First World War. The propaganda on both sides was so profuse that if you look at stories about the same event from both sides of the trenches, you can't even reconcile them as being the same story. So why the hell would I care about the fact that there may be some inaccuracies on Twitter or YouTube or AlexJones.com? Of course there are. They're probably slight in comparison to what I'm going to get on MSNBC, Fox News, fucking CNN, any of these outlets. BBC, Guardian, RT, Al Jazeera, you name it, and it's inaccurate. Of course it is. They do the bidding of some government entity that's co-opted them, if they're in a state where that's possible, or somebody, some politician or figure or business that's funded them in some way, or they do the bidding of the personal bias of their editor-in-chief or something of that nature. The world has gone completely to hell. I don't expect, by the way, what we see around us when we look. Take a good look around you. I mean you, the one watching the video. I don't care who you are. Take a look around your room or your porch or wherever, or your library, wherever you happen to be. Take note of all the stuff that you see around you because it could get burned alive by atomic fire at any given time. The things that you see around you, the rudiments of what we consider modernity that would be outdated anyway 20, 30 years from now anyway. We get old, we start getting salt and pepper hair, and by then it's completely outdated. You look back 20, 30 years before now, you look back to the early 90s or the 1980s, look at how much things have changed. You think they're not going to continue? Of course they will. This laptop that I'm using, right now it's a really good laptop. It's up to date, and it's running a modern system, and everything about it is perfectly kosher, but 10, 20 years from now it'll be a dinosaur. This microphone will be a dinosaur. The webcam will be a dinosaur. I'll be a dinosaur in 20, 30 years. I'll still be here probably if YouTube still exists. By then it'll probably have 3D holograms or something like that. By the way, I want to be the first person to test out such technology. I'm not going to try to fool you. I too want to dress up as Darth Vader and make a bunch of holographic videos there. But the world could go to hell at any given time. And the problem is, what we have called progress for so long, which is like the global economy, and the concept of more interconnected mainstream, lamestream media, it's just being used to fuck with people's heads. I don't fuck with people's heads. When people come to me for news or opinion, they're getting honesty. They may not agree with it, they may not always like it, but they're getting my honest opinion. Nobody's paying me to do this, other than some of my subscribers donate to me and people buy my books. But these idiots in the lamestream media and these people in DC or the Kremlin or anywhere else, and all of these retards are completely inseparable, unless you're talking about maybe Kim Jong-un or the leaders of Turkmenistan or some microstate that's too small for them to care about. All of them are corrupt. Every goddamn single one of them. They say, oh, I'm to the right, I'm a conservative. Oh, I'm a liberal. No, they're not. They're just a fucking globalist. They want your money and they don't really care about you. They say, oh, shed some crocodile tears for the immigrants that died on this boat. They don't care about that beyond their slave labor coming in on that boat. That's all they see them as, slave labor and a wedge issue during the elections. Within a democratic society, of course. If it's a more autocratic system where there's no real election, then they just see it as slave labor in the most pure sense. Oh yeah, bring all comers. I'll put them to work building my fucking pyramid if I want to. That's all they see them as. They don't have any respect for human life. The first wave of globalists may have given a fuck. They may have cared. You look back, maybe the pre-Truman times or something like, Woodrow Wilson, the League of Nations era. They said things are terrible. There's mechanized warfare, people burned alive, people rotting away in the trenches. We can't do this shit again. We need to come together as a civilized world and stop this shit and worry about something else. Wipe out a disease. We'll build a new skyscraper. We'll go to the moon or something. We'll fly people into the upper stratosphere. That's what they wanted to do. But once they exhausted all of those things that they could do, they quickly regressed back to sort of this weird tribal mentality and said, oh, fuck you, I've got mine. I want more money. And hey, the globalists, look what they did. They made it easier for all these nations to collude together. All we've got to do is buy off the politicians in all these nations. And they did. They did so successfully. And when they did that, they began collectively screwing everybody. You think that Russia and the United States really at this point are at odds? Economically, yeah. Socially, of course, as far as culture and tradition and language go, the grand chessboard, it's considered little more than a fun pastime to people like Putin and Obama. They love playing this game. It gets their dicks hard. It gives them an ego boost. That's really what it's about. They don't give a fuck about whether you live or die. They don't care whether 1,000 cops get massacred. They don't care what race you are. They'll kill you anyway. They don't care what gender you are or they don't care whether you like dicks or chicks. They don't care how rich you are, unless you happen to be one of their fellow elites that's helping fund this whole bullshit. They don't care what nation you're from either. You can be from Trinidad and Tobago or Ghana or the United States or France. You can be from Poland or Greece or Lithuania. You can be a Japanese person, an Australian, or you can be from the middle of Malaysia. It doesn't really matter to them. You're just a slave. Because they're shilling you and taking 90% of all your productivity anyway, unless you're extremely, extremely skilled, in which case maybe you can elevate yourself to their ranks. That's what globalism has devolved into. And so in closing, I'll say this. The entire world does need to come together, but not under the auspices of globalism, but opposition to globalism. We need to destroy them. That means we need to no longer suffer them. They're nonsense. These free trade deals, whether it's West or East, are no good. These trading confederacies are no good. The idea of a South American single currency is no better than the idea of the EU. All of these military alliances that they've created are nothing more than smoke and mirrors to derive even more money from their populations. It's all a bunch of bullshit. It's an illusion. The grand chessboard is real. There is the threat of atomic war, because all of these countries would stab all the others in the back in order to rule the world, of course. But right now, primarily speaking, everything else is just a bunch of bullshit smoke and mirrors. They can claim all the moral superiority that they want. They can say you're a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, you're a nationalist, you're an evil commie, you're whatever that you are. But at your heart, you're just a human being trying to make do in the world. Well, so are the people in those other countries. There's the point. The globalists don't want you to realize that. The globalists that want not one world order in perhaps the Alex Jones sort of Henry Macau sense, but one world order is in everybody's trading together and we're regulating everything and grafting 90% of the productivity. So we don't even give a fuck if we're one nation because it's better, it's easier. Trust me, for the globalists to keep you separate so that you can hate each other and so they can pit you against each other, whether it's race or nationality, it doesn't really they don't give a fuck. They're still getting their money. That's all they ever wanted. They've got their bunkers. You know, if they start a nuclear war, who the hell cares? They just go down there, they get a 10-year supply of food, they just sit down there and have orgies with their sex slaves and their guards. That's all they're going to do. And that's the truth. I thought people should probably know that. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. Figured it'd probably be more funny if I was inebriated. Also, when I'm sober, I'm more serious. Get to be more of a chucklehead when I have a couple of drinks. So yeah, a little bit about globalism. This video's probably unhinged. That's about all. Peace out.